Bluesboyjag here, yet another 3-string cigar box guitar lesson. It's a humbucker this time, and more John Lee Hooker boogie. We are playing in a different key. John Lee Hooker would often pick up his guitar, and he would take one of those strings, if the guitar was out of tune, and he would tune to that string. So if it was slightly flat or slightly sharp, then he would just tune all the strings to where they were sounding together, but not necessarily in the key of G, for instance. So this one is in G flat. So we have the third string instead of G, it's in G flat, and then your second string is D flat, and your first string is another G flat. So basically it's one flat for all three. It's flatted a half step. So what we end up with is a key that is G flat instead of G or A. And this was very common back in the day because they may have one string that was out of tune. In other words, instead of G, it was G flat, and they would tune all the other strings to that string. So you end up with these weird keys. And this goes way back, I mean talking way back, like probably back to the Dark Ages, when people would make their own instruments and they would just bang on them and make noise, and whatever it was tuned to is what it was tuned to, right? And they would just kind of make songs from there. And I'm talking way back, like I don't know, probably 900 BC, who knows? Goes way back. So this is pretty much G flat right here. In fact, it is G flat. So I've got the third string of a regular guitar, G flat, and I've got the second string is tuned D flat, and then the third string is tuned G flat again. So it's G flat, D flat, G flat. Instead of G, D, G. What does all that mean? Well, all it means is those strings are tuned together, so they are not dissonant, they are consonant. Dissonant means sounds awful, like that. That's consonant, which means the notes go together, they live together. It sounds fine, it sounds good, it doesn't sound drunken, right? Maybe that would be drunken. Somebody playing a guitar that's drunk. Well, actually, that's sort of a real chord. Anyway, you get the idea. So instead of G, it's G flat. So here's a couple of common G flat open tune John Lee Hooker licks. So I'm using my second string. I've got my first finger on that one on the 3rd fret. And all the other ones, the open 2 strings, outside strings, are open. Lots of choking again on the left hand, which I do all the time. When I started playing slide, I was heavily influenced by John Lee Hooker because I listened to a lot of his music. And I sort of stumbled across all these different weird fingerings, and I'm like, what chord is that, right? How about that? First finger on the 2nd string, 3rd fret, other 2 strings are open. That's a 7th chord. Now we bring it back up, so if I go to the 5th fret with my 3rd finger, 2nd string, outside 2 strings are open, not fretting the outside 2 strings at all, I'm only fretting the middle string. You can probably see it better if I use my first finger. That's 3 notes right there, that's 3 G flats. Now I move my first finger to the 3rd fret. Another thing that John Lee did was he would go up to the octave, which would be the 12th fret, and play those same licks. And of course, you need to get that funky rhythm going, so let's concentrate on that for a second with the right hand. I'm not using a pick, by the way. I'm pretending like there's a pick in between my thumb and my first finger, but I'm using the nail of my thumb and the nail of my first finger. basically I'm just randomly moving from the 2nd string, 3rd fret, up to the 5th fret. Same thing on the 1st string, and same thing on the 3rd string. So the only notes I'm playing are 0, 3, and 5. Now we need to play very minimally if you want to sound like John Lee Hooker. And the next thing you want to do is mute a lot with that 2nd, sometimes 1st, sometimes 3rd finger. So here's an example of that. I'm fretting the 2nd string, 3rd fret, but I'm choking with the other fingers. So jump over to the 2nd string with your 1st finger, and on the 3rd fret, choke with the 2nd and or 3rd and or 4th finger. Then jump over to the 1st string. All I'm doing is playing this one. One string is fretted, but I'm playing all 3. Jump that 1st finger down to that 3rd fret 2nd string. Now jump it down to the 1st. And the 3rd. Obviously, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th fingers are really important to do the muting. That's where you get that funky sound. Here's one of my all-time favorites too, right here. 2nd string, 5th fret, 3rd finger. That's all G notes. G, G, G. And the middle two are identical as far as the octave. This is the low G, that's the mid G, and that's another mid G. Exactly the same. 2 strings, same exact pitch. It sounds like a 6-string guitar to the uninitiated. And if you weren't watching a video of me playing a 3-string, you'd think it was a full-fledged 6-string guitar. Now, the next thing we want to do is get real funky. Real funky means choking with this hand. Well, that's one way to get real funky anyway. Here's another really cool thing. Do a very quick hammer-on. 1st finger is on the 2nd string, 3rd fret, and I'm hammering. I'm pausing a split second before I hammer that 2nd string, and I'm using my 3rd finger to hammer 2 frets up. But I'm strumming all 3 strings. Now if I play this chord by itself, it's like, hey, Jag, you're kind of drunk. That chord isn't right. But you don't really want to linger on it. That's where you get that sort of cockeyed, sort of, I don't know, weird. Is he out of tune? Is he in tune? He's in tune. Okay, no, he's out of tune there. But no, he's in tune there. Oh, okay. When you hit that one, that sounds like he's out of tune. It kind of gives you that drunken sound, right? Now we get into the choking part, choking with the fretting hand. And I'm intentionally staying in this spot this whole lesson right here. I'm using my 1st finger on the 3rd fret and my 3rd finger 2 frets up on the 5th. Okay, now we're going to concentrate on the right hand. Obviously, I'm choking with this hand to make it real funky. And I'm doing a pretty straightforward strum over here. It sounds pretty fancy. But here's what I'm doing with the right hand, the strum hand. Make sure you tap your foot or use your heel. And this is what I'm doing right now. You can't hear it. But I'm doing that with my foot. And of course, my hand is with my foot. So, if you can sort of see my leg there, when my leg comes up, my hand comes up. They are tied together with a string. Just kind of pretend like. So I've got my right hand with a string on it, and it's tied to my foot. So when my foot goes up, and when my hand goes up, my foot goes up, and vice versa. When the foot goes up, the hand goes up. It's almost as if there's an invisible string tied to my foot. You can't really see my leg very well here. I could probably move this down just a bit so you can see that. So my leg going down and up and down, I guess, is right there with my hand. So you see my leg going down and my hand are together. So back to John Lee's favorite note. Now that doesn't sound like a proper chord, does it? It sounds like a guitar that's out of tune. But the way you want to play this is minimally. So that's 3 notes right there. And I'm going to add the first string, 3rd fret. So I'm going to play this chord for a second, hang on this chord, play a funky rhythm. By the way, I'm choking with this hand. Now I'm going to open it up to the open chord. So here's your dissonance, which creates, I don't know, what would you call that? Tension. Now when I play the open chord, that releases that tension. And the trick with Johnny Hooker is you keep a lot of tension going for a long time. If you look closely, you can see my fingers bouncing around over here on the fretting hand. And if you've seen very many of my lessons, you see that all the time. I simply cannot play John Lee Hooker without doing that. So what's happening here? This is classic John Lee Hooker. First finger on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. And the thumb comes around to kill that 3rd string. Comes around the back. So all I'm doing is down, up with the right hand, but all the fancy stuff really comes from the left hand. So real slow, first finger is on 1, 3. Now I'm going to move it to 2, 3, and then 3, 3. Playing all 3 strings. Real slow. First string. 2nd string. 3rd string. I'm doing the exact same thing on the 1st string, 2nd string, 3rd string. It sounds like I'm jumping all over the fretboard. But the choke is really important. The choke is this. Killing those notes, killing those chords completely. And that's your John Lee Hooker boogie. Technically, I'm playing 1 chord the whole time, and I'm adding 1 or 2 notes to that open G chord. Now let's get really crazy. We're going to walk up on the 1st string only and find some cool notes to add to it. So far, we've only played 0, 3, and 5. So let's see what other notes sound kind of cool. Let's stay on the 1st string for a minute. We know those work. We've been doing that for 10 minutes here. 3rd fret, 5th fret. Let's go to the 6th, 7th, and 8th and see what happens. That obviously ain't gonna work. Even for John Lee Hooker, that's a little bit too crazy, right? 1st string on the 6th fret. Ooh, 7th fret sounds kind of cool. Doesn't sound too dissonant, too weird. How about the 8th? No, that ain't gonna work. Not unless you do a passing note. A passing note is just a real short note, like that. Now that sounds kind of cool if you make it real short. Okay, so we're on the 7th fret, 1st string. Other ones are completely open. The 2nd and 3rd are open. How about the 8th? I know this ain't gonna work. Yeah, that ain't gonna work. Actually, now you're starting to hear it's a walk up, right? Taken out of context, it's like, dude, you're drunk. That doesn't sound good at all. Who's gonna like that if you play that at some bar? Well, if you do it right. Now we can do the same thing on the 3rd string. Why? How do we get away with that? Because they're both G's, right? I just did the 3rd string by itself. To the uninitiated, that is the person who doesn't play an instrument in the audience, it sounds like a whole different dude standing over there playing the lick, right? But it's just 3 strings and 1 guy. I think I'll name this video 3 strings and 1 guy. All right, one more thing. You know, I always say one more thing, and then I give you 19 more things. 1st finger is curled, and I'm using that nail as a pick. I do this all the time. So if you want to get quiet, use this part of your finger, bring the volume down just a bit, get kind of more mellow. If you want to get bright, use that fingernail, like this. I'll give you an example. Bring it down. So far I'm using the 1st finger, just the tip of it, just the skin, not the nail. Oh, that brings up another lick right there, but I'll get back to that one in a second. So, 1st finger doing an up strum. It's really hard to do a down strum without hitting your nail. I'm trying to use just the skin of the tip of my finger. So I'm doing an up strum. That gives it a certain sound. But now if I use my nail and I do this, it gives it a nice bright sound. Sounds like suddenly I picked up a guitar pick while I'm boogieing. How did he reach over there to the table and pick up a pick while he's jamming? He's not. He's just using his nail. And then he's not using his nail. He's using the tip of his finger. Now we're going to get into a little bit of choking with the left hand here, and then we'll call it a day. So I'm going to get away from that 3rd fret here. Just go up higher. There's a major key right there. Well, not really a major key. It's still G, but I'm emphasizing the major 3rd of the G chord. So it sounds nice and happy. Down here, it's kind of dark, it's kind of boogie stuff, you know? That's where rock and roll came from, by the way, right there. But now if I move up here to the 9th fret, 2nd string, that happens to be the major 3rd of the G chord. So now we have a pretty G chord. Here's a pretty funky G chord, perfectly fine G chord, but if I use my 1st finger on the 2nd string, 9th fret, you get that major 3rd. I won't go into all the details of what the major 3rd is, but it's nice and pretty, right? So that major 3rd is the major 3rd of the scale. In other words, it's the pretty note of the scale. That's what makes it major. So if we go back to our boogie, third fret, first finger, like we did a minute ago. Now we jump up here to the major third. So here's your boogie, and here's your major third, which is kind of a happy, bright kind of a chord. Now we go back to the funky, sort of dark, right? Now I'm just randomly jumping back and forth between the notes that I've talked to you about earlier in this lesson. And don't forget that slide up. First finger, second string, second fret, slide up to the third fret. Playing all three strings. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Check out my website, bluesboyjag.com. New website, cigar box guitars for 20 years. And we'll see you next time.